Let me check out the whole slack music them have. Every one of them come on.
It needs something more positive right now for the youths them, because it's really damaging their mind.
The Broadcasting Commission intends to intensify the monitoring of all broadcast content on the airwaves.
Radio and television stations will now have to abide by some new regulations from the Broadcasting Commission.
The Commission has decided that with immediate effect, there shall be no further transmission of any recordings, live songs, music video, which promotes the act of daggering or which makes reference to or otherwise suggestive of the activity called daggering.
Entertainers Twins of Twins believe banning music with bleeps and daggering specifically from the airwaves is one-sided.
I don't really feel like say, the music or we are the bad at them. It got deeper than the music.
We are going to be really stifling talent and creativity and put a lot of pressure on dancehall.
Our people are capable of producing the type of material that is appropriate for broadcast.
Because the majority of the music that are produced now are basically raw or, dirty, as some people would say.
Dancehall to now be pushed back, and in my opinion it's being pushed back because somebody is always going to be offended.
It's if the airway clear towards the music when the man produce tell, most people can able to really listen to good music without hearing any indecent thing or for say XYZ. You understand what I'm talking about?
So has the Broadcasting Commission achieved its goal? Well, this is among the issues that we will be discussing in this special presentation on the Broadcasting Commission's directives, which were issued to broadcasters a year ago. We have an interesting and varied panel which will look at the directives which were given by the Broadcasting Commission, its impact on the music industry as well as the broadcasting sector. We have with us a well-known dancer, choreographer, leader of Lacadco Dancers, Leantoinette Steins. Beside her, the chairman of the Media Association of Jamaica, Gary Allen. To my right, someone who used to be called, I don't know whether she's still called Bad Girl Cecile, but she'll be well behaved on this program. Recording artist Cecile and the executive, the chairman of the Broadcasting Commission, Dr. Hopton Dunn. Welcome to our discussion, ladies and gentlemen. I want to start with you first, Mr. Allen. Could you tell us, go back to February 2009, did you yourself have concerns about media content, about the kinds of music that were being played, the lyrics to which the public were exposed to prior to the Broadcasting Commission's own directives?
Certainly. There were not just concerns that we had, there was a lot of filtering. I mean, what was being presented in the state that was of concern was probably the best 5% of what we were dealing with. We were filtering heavily. One of the things that we realized when we looked at it is that we were probably not allowing more than 60% of the content that we were getting on a regular basis to be there. But one of the things that was always a challenge in an industry, and my association is a trade association of independent members who have their licenses that they have to defend and so on. One of the things that always happens is that you can never get a rule for everybody and say that you must all abide by this rule. Your license is administered by your regulator, and where you have breaches, you account for it as an individual station. And so one of the things that we had was different persons would make their cases. Some people would be cited, some people would not be cited for different things. And so there was never any one line that was drawn for everyone. and therefore you all have to line up there. There was always the interpretation, the case being made, whether some people felt this was okay, but others didn't feel it was okay. And in that scheme, you will have different standards being applied across stations. I think that the important thing to recognize from the action that was taken in February was that a line was drawn for everyone. And therefore, that made it definitive for everyone. Because remember also that we are competitive media.
Yes.
We're not just competing with each other. We're also competing with what is available to people on CDs, what's available in parties, what's available on the bus, what's available in the bus park. And you don't want to feel like you are irrelevant and calling yourself the party station or the hip station or the youth station. So that was forcing people to try and get as close to the borderline as they can. And that was where people were going over the edge, falling over the edge. And then there were some other components to do with, well, were stations really adhering to some of the principles of not allowing editing on air live. Some people felt they were good enough to mix on air, do something live, and then things were slipping through that were really not supposed to slip.
So the Media Association would have seen the Broadcasting Commission's directives as leveling the playing field, as really bringing one standard for all the players in the media.
One of the points that we made when we came out in support of the action that the Broadcasting Commission took at that time was that this definitive step was the most significant move by the regulator, which allowed for us not to have to look over our shoulders as to whether or not some of us can get away with something and some can't. And you know, people always say, but you have a responsibility to make your own decisions and listen to this stuff and draw the line. And that is true, but there is not one person who has that one conditioning that goes across all media houses. So a standard for a talk show driven station may be quite different from the station that is trying to appeal to the party goers, and quite different from somebody else who has a mixed format. So we were at the point where this made a significant mark. And I also want to make the point that very often people speak to this issue as though nothing was being done. But prior to the directive from the Broadcasting Commission, and they're aware of it, and we had been in significant dialogue before, and that action was, as I said, the most definitive, but things were happening before that. There had been persons who were being suspended, persons who were losing their jobs, there were stations that had made decisions about changing their formats and so on and so forth, all in the name of trying to get to that same point of having what is acceptable. So it's not a matter that there is this approach which says, let's forget about standards and run with it. It was, how do you get to the point where you remain competitive, remain viable, and remain relevant to the audience that you're trying to get? Because at the end of the day, we are all trying to sell audiences.
Yeah, my final follow-up is, why was there so much resistance from your own disc jocks, from your own on-air people? I mean, the Media Association had this position, but it seemed like your workers, your frontline people, were hostile to the decision of the Broadcasting Commission.
Well, let's put it this way. The views were varied. There were some persons who understood. There were some persons who felt that it was impinging on creativity. There were some persons who felt that this was about to make them irrelevant, because not all disc jocks play the kind of music that is edgy and across the border and make some of us cringe. I mean, there are instances when some of us as managers have our children in our cars and we're listening to our stations, and you punch the button because that's not what you want your child to hear. That doesn't mean that you then walk into the office and decide it's okay for everybody else's child to hear it. But the process that you go through is one where you have to now go and discuss with the managers and the DJs and so on. And when they say to you, look, I'm just trying to make you as relevant as you can, and I really don't think this. And remember that our DJs come from the same society, you know. So the values that we are debating are issues that they debate as well, and say, well, this is social commentary, or this is something that is a reality, and why can't we bleep out the word and not place it on air? That is an editing format that is used across the world. Why can't we still have it here and use it? Those are some of the things.
Yeah.